Before the arenas, before the award.
This is b4Nashville Live. Have a question for our guest? Send it to us via Messenger.
Here's your host, George Davis.
And hello, how are you? Monday night, and we're back on Before Nashville tonight, being joined by a fella that started writing songs when he was 14, and he's I've heard a lot about him from mutual friends, and we'll talk about that. And well, let's just start it up right now. Tommy Karlas. Hey, Tommy, how are you?
Good. How you doing today?
Doing good. I got to start off with, I guess, your buddy Ron says that we're late.
We're late. We are late. Sorry, Ron. Sorry about that.
But that is the joy of technology.
That's right. It'll be on here forever.
That's right. So, we just work our way through it. So I got to ask, first off, I want to find out a little bit about getting up to the age of 14 where you started writing music. I mean, you're from East Alton, Illinois originally, and you now live in Nashville, and you've been in Nashville for a while. And what got you to the point at 14 that you were, what music were you listening to, and who were some of the influences that led you to the writing and things like that?
Yeah, I actually had a cousin, Pat Calhoun, who's from that area. Pat played football for Roxana in the 70s and baseball, and was a big sports guy. And he was basically a second cousin. He would always play guitar at family functions. He'd do stuff like James Taylor and America and Don McLean. And he just had a passion for music that kind of I saw from a very young age, and just the power of music, everybody singing along. And it's like, well, I'm going to try to learn to play guitar. And I spent about 6 months trying to learn Country Roads by John Denver. And I knew how to play the guitar. And at that point, I was already a big Garth Brooks fan. Obviously, everybody was in 1993, 94, 95. And I tried to play at a talent show. I kind of started to fall in love with writing songs, and wrote a couple songs just for the heck of it, and played it at a talent show and got good feedback, even if I wasn't really that good. Like people told me I was, made me think I was. And at 14, I went to Nashville, and my first night I went to the Bluebird Cafe, which is, a world famous little hole in the wall cafe, very prestigious. And I saw a guy named Dean Dillon and another guy named Gary Burr and Skip Ewing and Hugh Presswood. And all those guys were the best songwriters in Nashville at that time. And they'd written so many of the best country songs. And they played in a little round there. And I just fell in love with it. I immediately felt like that was what I wanted to do. Like, there are these guys, they're not the guys singing the song. They're the guys that go and they write songs during the day with each other, and then go home and let other people do it. There's just something. At that point, I made a 5-year plan, and 5 years later, I ended up moving.
Wow. So was the music that you were listening to, was that kind of the music of choice for a lot of the people you were hanging around with and running around with at that point in your life early on?
Yeah, another guy that's from our area is Charlie Brown. He had released several albums too, and was kind of a local country star in our area. And I befriended him, and him and I really loved Garth Brooks and got into him and went and saw him live. He was the one I took that trip to Nashville with. We actually were roommates there too, and here in Nashville for a time. But yeah, we both just shared the love of writing songs and started writing songs together. I think that was a huge part of it, because doing it by yourself would be one thing, but having somebody else that was into it, it's like if you get into something like I'm into pickleball now. Pickleball wouldn't be very much fun alone, but if you have somebody to do it with and help you get better and better at, then it's fun, and it makes you pursue it more than you would otherwise. And Charlie was kind of that guy. We kind of shared that love for country music and writing songs, and we still write songs to this day.
And I know from mutual friends you played basketball in high school
And baseball and football. Yep.
Yeah, so you were kind of all around. I happen to know. I believe it was your high school basketball coach, Ty Morgenthaler. I believe he had some kind of coaching for you when you were younger, and so that's kind of an interesting connection. You know, that 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
But at 19, you moved to Nashville. Now, you did actually before then. Now, let me say this: you wound up, like you said, playing at the Bluebird or visiting the Bluebird and just loving it. And the Bluebird, like you said, one of the most iconic places in Nashville. If anybody knows anything about country music in Nashville, they know the Bluebird. But at the age of 19, you left Illinois to move down to Nashville and started writing then. What was it like writing at that age? I mean, you're a young guy. Did you know, was it easy to find people to write with? Was there a little bit of a stigma to it or what?
As far as 14 or when I moved to Nashville when I was 19?
When you moved to Nashville when you were 19?
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, especially back then and up until then, being young was probably a little bit of an asset because they were always looking for the younger guys or the new talents. And I remember even my first publisher telling me, like, hey, you're only new once in this business. You know, the part that hurts you, obviously, is your inexperience. But if the talent is there and the work ethic is there, I think people catch on to that. And it really comes down to the songs that you're writing. Like if they sense that there's a kernel of talent in there and that's worth, you know, pursuing and helping to grow.
Right. Now,
But yeah, but it is tough. It's all about co-writing. You know, obviously everybody, when they get here, they want to write with the number one writers and the big writers and, you know, and everybody tries to do that. But for the most part, you're really trying to find the guys that you click with, your class of guys, networking and meeting people and at the same time by yourself, even working on your own craft.
So you brought up an interesting point because, you know, everybody wants to write with the top writers, but you have to find your own clique, your own group of you know, folks to write with, guys to write with. Is that a downside because you're not writing with the top guys, or do you feel like that sometimes those guys that are, you know, are not the huge writers, you know, like nowadays, you know, the Shane McAnallys and the Dean Dillons and some of these other guys that are up there, would they take a chance on somebody that just got to Nashville, or do they feel like they want somebody experienced? I mean, have you dealt with that?
Yeah, I think it's different with everybody. You know, when you get to that level, you only have so much time, so they're using their time as wisely as they can. So if you can impress them enough, then yeah, they can do it. But otherwise, you know, it's a craft thing. You've got to hone your craft. You've got to give them something incentive to make them want to spend their limited time with you. But it's weird too, because there's going to be people that are coming up with you that are going to be in that stage, and maybe hopefully you will be too at some point. You said right. Shane Mack was one of the names. There was Shane's first 5 years here in Nashville. His bio read that he wrote with 2 people, and I was one of them. For 5 years, Shane really didn't have, you know, a whole lot going on, and he was glad that I was writing with him. And then all of a sudden, he got a couple of hits, and he just shot way up there.
Right. Right. And that's one of the things, I mean, you never know. I mean, that's the odd thing about Nashville. You just never know, you know. You could be like, you know, Craig Morgan talks about going into Mexican restaurants when he first got to Nashville, and just getting the chips and salsa and a glass of water and eating and drinking that and then leaving because he couldn't afford, anything else.
Yeah.
And you just never know what guy is going to take off. I say it like this. Everybody in Nashville, because I deal a lot with independent artists, I say it this way. Everybody in Nashville was independent at one time or another. Everybody started off independent. Nobody got big overnight. I don't care who you are. Well, I won't say overnight, but you didn't go into Nashville being that star. You went in there as an independent.
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of got lucky when I moved to town. The average, everybody told me, was 5 to 7 years. It takes 5 to 7 years on average to get your first publishing deal. And I was ready for that. I was ready to network and do everything I was supposed to do and hone my craft. And ended up my first week there, BMI was holding a workshop where we could pitch to the #1 publisher at that time, pitch our songs. And me and Charlie pitched 2 songs. And out of the 50 songs, they kept our 2 songs. And they took it back to the president of the company and said, hey, here's these songs. And he said, I want to meet these guys tomorrow. I ended up getting my first publishing deal because of that meeting my first week in Nashville, which ended up leading to all the other stuff. So I got very, very lucky. I could have easily been 5, 7, 10, 12 years before getting a deal, because I've seen talented guys that have not got stuff going for that long. But to your point, one of the guys, it was that deal that I got offered, it was between me and another guy. And that other guy was Luke Bryan. And so I ended up getting that publishing deal, but it worked out for Luke because we were all buddies. We all were in that same class and hung out together. It worked out for Luke because 4 months later, he got a publishing deal with the publisher that actually got him the record deal. So, I mean, like, things just took off for him after a certain point too. But to your point, you don't know. You just never know. And that's why, more than trying to write with the best people or who you think is going to do something for you, to me, it's more about finding the people that get what you do and that is similar to what you do, that you click well and work well together, and people that you like too,
Right. And I mean, you've had Blake Shelton, Randy Travis, Old Dominion, Montgomery Gentry, Trisha Yearwood. A lot of people have recorded your songs. I mean, Montgomery Gentry walked away with like one of their #1 top 10 hits on a song that you wrote. And you just really in your own right, you've kind of taken off. You've written with Luke, you've written with Darius Rucker, you've been, written with Old Dominion and Bobby Braddock and Mac Davis. And I'm sure, and I don't know all the ones you've written with, but I'm sure it's a very, very long list of folks that people would go, oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And that was all, it's networking. It's really weird. Country music is really kind of small in a way. It's 2 one-way streets, like a 5-block period. And most of all of country music is written or based out of those 2 one-way streets. It always has been. That's always been kind of the cool thing about it. It's almost kind of like a big high school. But when I moved here, there was over 2,000 signed writers in country music. Since then, because of streaming and because things it's harder to get paid as a songwriter these days, it's down to about 300 or 400 songwriters that are in all of country music, which is crazy. But so it's hard to break into that. But at the same time, like it's very small. So you at least know who the people are. It's not like LA where it's all spread out. But yeah, that's the way I look at it.
Now, when you say there's 200 or 300 songwriters now in Nashville, that's major songwriters you're talking about, correct? Or is that overall?
I'm talking, I think the last number was around 400 that I heard. 400 signed writers that have a publishing deal. Yeah.
Okay. Because I know there's a lot out there that don't have publishing deals, but they're working toward.
Yeah, there's tens of thousands of people that are wanting to write songs and do that for a living. Yeah.
Yeah, I never want to do it for a living, but I have just kind of attempted to, which is a joke, quite honestly.
No, I mean, hey, look, that's the thing. Like, the thing I always tell people is, don't try to do this unless you would be doing it just for the love of it anyway. You know, I mean,
Right.
that's really the joy of it anyway, is writing songs. It's cool if you get to do it as a job, but it's really just about the power of music.
Right. And I mean, you've been a songwriter, I guess in Nashville longer than you've been well, let me say it this way. You've been a songwriter longer than you've been a recording artist, as far as, doing, full length stuff, because you've only got a couple of albums. Your first one was put out in 2021, and then you just released a new one. Did you have some stuff you recorded before that?
I did do a little 2-song single CD when I was 18. I came to Nashville and did that just kind of for fun and because I played with a band and back in St. Louis, a country band. But when I moved to Nashville, my number one thing was songwriting. I just wanted to be a songwriter. Obviously, if somebody would have offered me a record deal or said, "Hey, I'll give you a record deal," I would have definitely done it, because then I'd be getting cuts 100%, even if they were just mine. But I always knew I wanted to be a writer. I knew that people would take me more seriously if I said I was just a songwriter, because there is that thing when you meet someone, like, especially back then, are you an artist or are you a songwriter? And if I could establish myself as a songwriter first, I knew I'd have more options. But the albums really just came about because 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I had a handful of songs, and believe me, I've gone years and not written anything that was very good. And I had a handful of songs that were really great that weren't getting cut. And I just thought, man, these songs are too good to not be out there. So I ended up, had a couple friends that had the idea of putting out some music myself, and that's kind of how that started.
Right. So when explain the process. I mean, I've worked in the industry for a long time, and I do understand it. But explain the process, like you're talking about a song. You had a handful of songs that didn't get cut. Why would what would keep those from being recorded by someone? You got a great song, and how do they go about if they do want to record one? What's the typical, steps in order to do that, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing about country music, it's always been about the song, and it's been about artists finding the best songs. Even going back to like Garth Brooks or George Strait. George Strait didn't write almost any of his songs. There were songwriters that did that, and it's about the best song. Or Garth Brooks. Garth was a songwriter, but he knew his albums would be better if he wrote half of them and then got outside songs, to complete the album. He knew it'd be way better. So yeah, it's basically this town was built on good songwriting, great songwriters, and artists picking great songs. And that's basically the whole goal. Is basically, as a songwriter, you get a publisher, and then a publisher gives you money to live off of. They pay for your demos. They help you connect you with other writers, and then they take your best songs and try to pitch them to the big artists that are looking for a different kind of song. There's a tip sheet, which you probably know, that it says Kenny Chesney is recording on these dates, and he's looking for a beach song or a ballad or a show opener. And you basically, it's their job for you to write those, and then them try to get it cut.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, because it kind of explains to those that don't know exactly, that are watching or listening, how that process works. Because, some people think, oh, they just, everybody writes their own songs. They go in the studio, they record them, they put it on an album, and because of their name, it's going to be a hit. Well, that's not always the case. I mean, if you think back, like album sales, when there was physical albums or CDs, most people bought those for like 2 songs, and that was it. They might not even listen to the rest of the CD the whole time they had it, because they had those 2 songs that were their favorites. But there's a lot of songs that are just as good, some maybe better than what they released, that are on that as well, that people never got to hear because they didn't know. That was one of the things that I I'd listen through every CD, every album, everything, because I'm, like I said, I just have a love for music, and I don't care, I know Kenny Chesney's not going to put some absolute terrible song on an album, and I also know a lot of the independent artists that I deal with day to day, they're not going to do that either. They're, like I said, they're all looking for the best song. And it may not be an absolute hit, but it's still a song that speaks to them, and they feel like it'll speak to somebody else.
Yeah.
And so if say a young man come up to you and just said, he's a Midwest boy, and he says, Mr. Karlas, how do I get into writing songs and working toward a publishing deal? What's the first thing you're going to tell him he needs to do?
Well, I guess usually in those scenarios, it's more the second question that I get, more like, hey, I am a songwriter. I've moved to town. I've bet my whole life on this. I want to do this for a living. What do I got to do to get a publishing deal? And going back to what we were talking about earlier, you do want to try to write up. You write up. You try to write with people that are better than you, while still finding the guys that you can collaborate with too, that are in your class. But I mean, man, it's honing. To me, it's always been, the way I look at it is, it's honing your craft. Just becoming better, like being hungry for that feedback, like sending songs to publishers, to NSAI, just doing everything you can to figure out, how can I get better at this? It's like if you were a carpenter, or if you were a baseball player, a pitcher, or whatever, like, what can I do to get better at this and be a master at my craft? And I see that as one prong, and then I see as the other prong being the networking piece, or the business side, which is just networking with people, getting to know people. And, because it really is just a business of people, I mean, that's really kind of how you get to write with different people, is just connecting and getting to know somebody, and then they know somebody, and, that's how things can take off.
Right.
And beating down those publishers' doors, but I will say, like, you don't want to try to get a publishing deal until you really feel like you're ready, because there's only so many places in Nashville. So you want to feel like when that time comes that you do knock on that door, that you're ready for it. Because, you may not get that chance again.
Right. What's one song that you have told yourself, damn, why didn't I write that?
I don't know if I've ever said, why didn't I write that? I've said a lot, I wish I would have written that. But I've had ideas too that, like, I had that title, or I had that idea, why didn't I write that? But for the most part, it's really just been, I'm just an admirer of the craft. I mean, when you can hear a great song that just makes you want to get in there and do it, something that really inspires you, it makes you want to go home, pull the guitar off the wall, and write something. I mean, that's, to me, what has been the thing that's driven me the most. If it's touched me, then other people will feel it, and it'll have an impact on them too.
Right. Is there a particular artist that you like to write? I don't want to say for, but you like for your songs to be pitched to, and hopefully get a cut on their album or streaming or whatever they call it nowadays, for them to record it?
Yeah. I mean, that's changed through the years, but for the longest time, George Strait, and what's funny is, I think the guys who write the countryer stuff that I do feel the same way I do about it. And that's kind of how it was even back then. Most guys that were country or real craftsmen all wanted a George Strait cut. Today it's turned into Cody Johnson. Everybody wants to get a song on Cody's record. I think there's two reasons for that. One, he picks great songs. He's a great singer. and two, they're open to it, that they get the best music because they're not. I mean, I know Cody's producer personally. I've known him for years. He doesn't want to know who wrote the song. He listens to the song, and if they cut it, then he'll want to find out. But a lot of other places, it's like, oh, he wrote the song. Yeah, let's cut it. So it's really, with Cody, it's really about the best song, which inspires people and makes people want to be a part of it.
Right. Right. And it's so funny that you bring up Cody, because, and then you mentioned George, because I kind of equate the two almost, like, I don't want to say the same, but years apart, but their style of music and everything just fall in line with each other. And, Cody's that good country, true country, like, George Strait is. And I mean, he's one of my favorite artists. I could sit and listen to him. If I listen to everything he ever put out, I'd listen to it again.
Absolutely. No, that's what I'm saying. He's great. That's how I feel about him now. And that's how I felt about George Strait back then.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just put out a new album, a new stream. I guess it's on DSPs. Are there physical copies yet?
Yeah, we do have physical copies of this that we had at the album release in Godfrey, and then there's a store that sells them in Alton or Godfrey called Riverbend Records that my buddy Billy Hurst owns. But for the most part, yeah, it's just on streaming.
Right, and that's called "What Matters to Her" is the name of it, correct?
Yep, that's the name of the album. 16 songs.
Now, I seem to remember there was one song on there that you had written, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Trey Lewis recorded it as well, or has picked it up or something?
Yeah, there's a song called Pretty Hungover that Trey Lewis has recorded, and he's going to be releasing that on New Year's Day this coming 2024.
I'm looking forward to that. So you've got your guitar there, and this is a show about music, and so how about you sing one for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do. So I've when I released my album, I really thought a win to me would be getting 20 or 30,000 streams. I mean, that was about what I was hoping for and thought I would get. But one of the songs is probably my favorite song I've ever written, and nobody has recorded it yet. No major label artist has recorded it yet, but it's pretty much the song that helped us get over 2 million streams on these albums. And it was on the first album, and it's still probably one of my favorite songs I've ever written. So I'll play that one for you. It's called Lessons, which, by the way, if y'all out there get a chance, go check out the music video. The person who put a lyric video onto this really did a great job, and that was really the big driver of most of the streams on these albums. A bully won't stop till you stand up to it. You ain't gonna win if you plan on losing. Sometimes a curse can be a blessing. So wait your turn and learn your lessons. Don't hold a grudge, it'll make you bitter. Don't think that money's gonna make you richer. And happiness ain't about possessions. Gotta crash and burn and learn your lessons. You can't win them all. You can't change the past. Don't take for granted what you got. Don't always want what you don't have. Take some chances, have some faith. Make the most of every day. 'Cause it could all be over in a second. Don't miss a day with your old man fishing, or a cup of coffee in your mama's kitchen. 'Cause life is short, time is precious. Sometimes it hurts to learn your lessons. You can't win them all, you can't change the past. Don't take for granted what you got. Don't always want what you don't have. Take some chances, have some faith. Make the most of every day. 'Cause it could all be over in a second. Don't break her heart if you know you love her. Don't let her leave 'cause you're too damn stubborn. 'Cause she'll move on and you'll regret it. Hold on to her and learn your lessons. Every choice has consequences. Take it from me and learn your lessons.
All right. If you're just joining us, from Tommy Karlas is here with us tonight and talking to him about his career as a songwriter and as an artist and his songwriting career. I mean, one of the high points is you wrote "Roll With Me," that became Montgomery Gentry's fastest rising and most downloaded song of pretty much their career.
Yeah, that was my first really big song, and that was probably about 5 or 6 years into being here in Nashville.
Mm-hmm. When you heard that Montgomery Gentry was going to record the song, what was the first thought that you had?
I was thrilled. It was that's the whole thing. You're just trying to break in there. This was. Everybody's different. For me, I didn't have, it's very rare that I get a feeling with a song. Some people are like me and some people are different. Some people feel like a lot of their songs are like that. I know I have a lot of good songs, but I don't have a lot of great, really special songs. And that was probably one of those very few when we wrote it that I knew it was going to be a big hit. And so really to me, it was about just finding the right artist, and it had that reaction from people. It was on hold for everybody. Darius Rucker wanted to do it, Dierks Bentley. But I was thrilled that Montgomery Gentry was going to do it because I was a big fan of those guys.
Right. Well, and that says a lot. I mean, when you got Darius and Dierks wanting to put a song of yours, on hold to record, and then you got Eddie and T-Roy come along, and then they just do it and do it right. I mean,
Yeah,
they got the best. To me, they just sounded so great together. It was such a loss when T-Roy died.
it was terrible. Yeah,
but I always loved Montgomery Gentry from the first time I heard him. I mean, I thought, man, these guys are just it.
they are. They had their own thing, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And Eddie's still doing what he can, but even he says it's still not the same. It'll never be the same. I mean,
No.
Of course, no matter what.
Yeah.
But if there was a artist that has passed on that you could go back and have dinner with and talk to them, be it an artist or a songwriter or somebody like that, who would that person be, the artist or songwriter, and what would you want the conversation to be about?
And somebody who's no longer with us.
Right.
Yeah. Man, that's a good one. I mean, first thing that comes to mind would probably be Hank Sr., just because he was such a big part of starting it all. Um, just, yeah, I mean, so much that is very distinctive about country music. Uh, you can hear in Hank Williams Sr. To me, that just, and that was, I try to picture what music was like before that. And I really can't picture too much that sounded like or could have been formed into country music today. So I'd probably just want to talk to him personally, get to know him, and figure out how he thought about songwriting, because he has some classics that changed the world, you know.
Yeah. And the difference between, and as much as I like Hank Jr., the difference between the two is there's a pretty broad range there, you know, because you get Senior, who was more, I guess, prolific and kind of started it all, like you say. And then you got Hank Jr., who's, you know, a lot of his stuff is just, it still had that country feel. It's still, you know, it still kind of had that influence of his dad, but then it took on its own meaning as well, its own persona, if you will.
Yeah, it was a different time, and he obviously, you know, was distinguishing himself from his dad too. But yeah, and he's another great artist in his own right. But yeah, they're pretty different.
Right. Um, so if you could go out on tour tomorrow with an artist, as well, let's say this, if you were to go out on tour tomorrow as a headliner and you could pick two opening acts to go with you, who would you take on your tour?
Man, it would probably be Cody Johnson and Chris Stapleton. If it were just for like who I would actually want to listen to and hang out and would fit with my music, it'd probably be those guys, or you know, I like John Party, the guys that are a little bit more in our corner of country music, that are the country guys. But probably those two if I had to choose. Now, if the question were like, you know, because a big part of my job is writing with these new artists, that most of the guys that I write with have a record deal, a major label, or they're starting out, or they're, you know, really the most talented guys of people that you don't know. A lot of those guys I've got to meet, especially on the country side of things anyway. And a couple of them, like, if I would choose them because I want them to be big or I want the world to see them, there's a couple of names that really come out. One guy is named Will Jones. And then another guy is named Bryce Leatherwood, who just won The Voice last year. I've been riding with both of those guys, and they're just both really country and crazy, crazy talented, especially Will. Will is like, he was a child prodigy, guitar playing, and came from a family of bluegrassers, and his songwriting and his voice, he almost sounds a little bit like Marty Rabin from oh gosh, I can't think of the band now, the old 80s band, but he just sounds like those old school guys, and he's probably one of the more talented people that I've met. So just look out for him. Like, if a guy like him doesn't make it, I don't know what's going on in this world.
Nashville politics. That's what it would boil down to.
Yep, absolutely.
So what song would you say right now has been stuck in your head, like most recently, just a song that's been stuck in your head that you're going, golly, this is just going over and over and over, that's already been recorded, or that, you know, somebody has done?
Gosh. Man, I'd have to think about that, because I'm so bad at listening to country radio. You know, I mean, I got out, there was years there in 2010, 2014, those years where everything sounded the same. Country was dead. Like it was just, and it got me really out of listening to country music. I'm getting back into it again because it's getting countryer again. But man, like Till You Can't is probably one of those by Cody that to me are just a good example, or a song that I could listen to quite a bit, that just kind of sums up what I try to do. That would probably be one. I'd have to think about it though. How about you?
Oh man, you know, I work in country radio during the day, and so I'm like inundated with country music constantly. So it's hard to pick, but I'm trying to think. I have to be honest. There's a new, well, she's a fairly new female artist. She was just out on tour with Old Dominion, and I started listening to her stuff after I interviewed her husband. And her husband is Jay Allen, that was on The Voice. And that is Kylie Morgan. And she has a song, believe it or not. I've done some mobile DJ work. And so, I'm telling you, like all the jobs I've ever done in my life have centered around music pretty much. But she had a song called Bridesmaids. And when I first heard that song, I told my wife, I said, that is the perfect intro song for a bride and her bridesmaids. And it was just stuck in my head. I couldn't get rid of it, and I don't know if it was because of that or what. I don't mobile DJ anymore, but I have friends that do, and I've told them, this is a song that when you sit down to discuss the reception with your groom and your future groom and the future bride, when the bride says, I don't know what song I want my bridesmaid party to come into, this is a great one to give to them. And I help out a lot of guys that don't feel like they're great in that stuff. Not that I'm great in it, but it's like that I have asked me, to help in different areas. And so it'd be like, you give them that, you bring it up on your phone, you play it for them, and then see what they think, kind of thing. But that song's really been stuck in my head. Then she has another one called If He Wanted to, He Would, which my wife brought to my attention. And I think she's a phenomenal artist, very unique voice. I looked at her bio, and I really can't remember a whole lot about her other than she and Jay got married, I think it was a year ago. May not have been that long ago. But one of the artists I'm really liking right now, and Jay's got some good stuff out, but I have so many favorite artists. I'm like you, it's just hard for me to pick.
Yeah. While you were saying that, it actually made me think probably the song that I felt the way you're describing with was One Thing at a Time. I don't know what it is about that song by Morgan Wallen, but I just, I love that song. I probably listened to that song more than any other song the past year. That's a good one.
Yeah, and Morgan is so good. So I opened it up for questions online, and I've got one. This is actually from my wife, which I think is a very good question. I'm going to have to incorporate this more into the show. But if you were to be a contestant on The Voice, what song would you sing in hopes to get that 4-chair turn?
That's interesting. Man, when it comes to like songs with the song and the vocal, one of my favorites is probably Bill Withers. And I think it would probably be a Bill Withers song. Maybe either Use Me or Ain't No Sunshine When She's Gone. There's something about those songs vocally that I love singing, and to me it just they're just fun to sing. I guess I probably wouldn't. I might not be too good at song choice, but that would be what I'd do.
Well, I have to be honest, because the next words out of my wife's mouth were, let's hear it. So. So give us a little bit of the sunshine.
Oh man. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. Ain't no darkness every day. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. And this house ain't no home anytime she goes away. This time, one time, wish she's gone. I wonder if she's gone to stay. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. And this house ain't no home anytime she goes away. It's about all I've done in a while.
That's pretty good. I mean, I'm no Blake Shelton, and I'm no Lyle, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
But you know, just the essence of the way you did that was so good. My wife actually gave you 4 chairs. So
awesome. Tell her I said thank you.
And so it's pretty exciting. I mean, I kind of sometimes I get into personal stuff and sometimes I stay away from it. So I got to tell you this. I'm going to ask a question that may not be so much now, but maybe at one point it was, because it's kind of a personal type of thing. But do you or have you ever struggled with self-doubt about picking music as a career?
Oh gosh, it's a part of the job. I mean, it's yeah, absolutely. I mean, this job is rejection for a living. I mean, I'm talking now of being a songwriter, which is what I've always, I do the artist stuff and I do the songwriter rounds, hit songwriter rounds around the country and play music and release music and do that stuff. I see that as a second job. My career is writing songs. And it's harder to be successful at this than it is to be in the NFL or, to do most things. It really is like it's just freaking tough. And especially because it's so much of it is subjective. 20 years ago, like up until 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if you wrote a truly, truly awesome, amazing hit, smash, no-brainer song, it 100% was going to get cut and people were fighting over it. To me, that's what Roll With Me was. I can't say I know for a fact that Roll With Me would get cut today. And so I think a job where it's rejection for a living, where you are just relying on other people's opinions and where everybody wants the piece of the pie is smaller, so everybody's wanting to get their stuff on there. I've seen so many people come and go. I'm probably one of 50 writers out of those 400 that have been here for 20 years and still doing it for a living. And the thing that you always see before they go is bitterness, jadedness, and just kind of a negative outlook. And that's something we all battle with from time to time. But I think it's the kiss of death whenever it gets away from you and you lose your love for this. There's been so many times where I have had to be purposeful about finding my love for it again, about facing the rejection, making myself listen to music, making myself find why I want to do it for a living. If I had a kid, I wouldn't tell them, no, don't do this, but I would say, look, this is really tough. Make sure it's something, make sure you can picture what failure looks like and you're okay with that too. But yeah, but having said that, like getting through those periods, finding your love for it again, remembering why you want to do it, it's what's kept me here. And now, I'm starting to get some stuff going again. So, it's just, to me, it's a God's plan kind of thing. I feel like when I resigned to God's plan about 7 or 8 years ago, and, God, if you want me to do this, open these doors. And if you don't, then I'll accept that too. And next year he may say, hey, it's time to stop doing this. But for right now, the doors have been swinging open and I've been getting some momentum. So I'm going to do it as long as he wants me to.
Right. And that's, I mean, that leads to another question that is just, to me, is very poignant of being, is it worth it?
How so?
With all the ups and downs that it can bring, and sometimes the self-doubt and those kind of things, is it worth it to keep pushing forward? I mean, as a songwriter, I feel like as a songwriter, you're kind of striving to write that no-brainer hit for somebody, and maybe in the back of your mind, but that's always something a songwriter thinks about. You know, I want that one hit or whatever. Is it worth what you have to go through?
Financially, I mean, no, but otherwise, I think I think that's a question that is different for everyone. Right now, I would say 100% yes, it is worth it. But I feel like I'm getting stuff going. Ask me that in my years where I don't have anything going, and my answer will be a little bit different. It might be a little bit more, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that's why at the end of the day, I only kept doing this because I love doing it. And as long as I love doing it, it is worth it. But if it gets to a point where somebody is not enjoying doing it, or it is about being successful, then it's not worth it. I mean, really, you're writing songs, and the bonus is being able to do it for a living or be successful at it. But really, if you're writing songs, it's not about being successful as much as it is about your love of it. But if you're depending on it, for a job, then yeah, that's a hard question you got to ask yourself.
Right. So when you are writing, do you prefer to kind of clear your head and just write maybe silently or by yourself, or are you more do you more like to be in a place where there's others, where you can bounce off of each other and get inspiration from each other?
Yeah, no, I do both. I mean, Nashville, like, down on Music Row every day, almost very few people really write by themselves anymore. And pretty much all of the writers are down there with somebody different every day. I'm booked all the way into like April next year. I've got dates probably in the summer even of next year. But for me, most people just write every day, 4 or 5 days a week. I write 3 days a week, 3 or 4 days a week with somebody else, with different people every day. And then I have 1 or 2 days a week that I write by myself. So that's just been, I just feel I'm a lot more productive. And, that's taken 15, 20 years to learn that that's what I need to do. But I do it every day. And it's one of those things you don't really, watching the greats when I came up, you don't wait for inspiration. You treat it like a job. You show up every day. There's a great book about that, by the way. You've probably heard of The Art of War. Or no, it's The War of Art. It's the opposite of the famous one. It talks a lot about being a professional, whatever you're doing, and or the professional mindset. But yeah, I co-write with different people every day, and then I have maybe a couple times a year where I won't touch my guitar for a month, or I'm not a month, but a couple weeks, and just kind of recharge and just listen to music and kind of find my love for it again.
Right. So you've able to maintain a lot of people listening to your streams on the DSPs and stuff. What has been the hardest about, or maybe the easiest? I don't know. I'm going to go. What has been the hardest to get that fan base and to maintain it?
Yeah, I mean, and again, like, if songwriting was paying what it should, I wouldn't have to do that, and that would be a fun thing that I would do, but it doesn't, so that's really a second job.
Right.
To me, the hardest part is the social network posting, marketing side of all that. I would rather not be on Facebook and everything that takes up so much time. That really is a full-time job. Most big artists that are doing that, they have somebody that does that for them. For me, because I'm a smaller artist, I have to do all of it. And to me, learning how to do all that and having to spend so much time doing that takes me away from the creative things that I want to do with my main job, writing songs, or being in the studio recording. That's probably the hardest, or at least my least favorite side of it. Just posting every day, or posting a certain amount of time, or having to find the right thing that's going to get reach, or the right thing that's going to spread or find with the algorithm, or that's going to get views or whatever. Because like I said, it's a second job, and my album release shows and my shows that I do, that's a big part of my income, especially in the years where I'm not, I don't have a hit song, or my songs aren't taking off. So a lot of it depends on that. So I'm trying to do everything I can to get people to listen or to follow or to hear about it.
Right. What is the latest, or who is the latest artist that you've had that you can share with us? Let me say that, because I know sometimes you can't always tell that kind of stuff because of certain things. But who is the latest artist that has recorded a song that you have written? Or what song? I say the latest artist. I think that's, I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound
The one that actually has already been physically recorded is probably the Trey Lewis one. There is had one, Ray Scott put out one. There's a lot of guys that have a lot of streams that probably not everybody has heard of that have them out there. Like I said, as a songwriter, the last couple of years I've had over 100 million streams. Which, if you had told me 20 years ago, hey, in 20 years, you're going to have over 100 million plays for your songs, I would have thought I'm sitting pretty. But the pay for that is almost nothing. I get paid more for my 2 million streams as an artist than I do for the 100 million streams I have as a songwriter. But the biggest answer that comes to mind is actually just recently we found out Riley Green is going to be recording a song that we wrote a couple months ago, and he's going to be doing it with Ronnie Dunn with Brooks and Dunn, and we wrote a song a couple months ago that is what they call an interpolation. It's like the Heads Carolina thing. That's called an interpolation. But I'm not a huge fan of those, the way they do them nowadays, because these days they basically just put new lyrics over the melody and the same thing. And to me, it's not very interesting to me. The old school way they did it, like Brad Paisley's Old Alabama, was like its own song. And then it was its own song, almost like a tribute song, but it was its own song. And then it had a piece of the old song in it. And that was how we did this new song. We did it for Brooks and Dunn's Neon Moon. And the song that we have that they're doing is called Blue Neon Moon, and the title is Once in a Blue Neon Moon. But we wrote it, and it was a gamble, because you write something like that, and it's not like a parody where you don't have to have permission. We wrote it knowing that Ronnie Dunn was eventually either going to say yes or no, and if he said no, the song doesn't exist, it's done.
Right.
But if he said yes, then things would happen. And we wrote it, and we spent a couple weeks building the demo and really trying to get everything perfect on it. And he ended up loving it. So yeah, now we're down that road. So that's pretty cool. I'm really excited about that one.
That's awesome, because I'm a fan of Riley. I mean, I like Riley Green. I've liked him for years. I had the opportunity to meet him a few times, and Brooks and Dunn, some of my earliest I haven't always been a country music fan. There's always been country music in my house because my mom used to listen to, like Tammy Wynette, George Jones, and a lot of those. But I haven't always listened to country. But I got into country probably like in the early 2000s and stuff like that. And Brooks and Dunn were just one of the ones that I just really gravitated to. Loved what they were, the music that they had out and stuff like that. And I was just like, holy cow, these guys are great. But Riley is just one of those guys. He's a super nice guy, and he's fairly decent singer. I mean, I don't want to give him too much credit, but
no, he does fine as a singer. But I think there is something. I'm a fan of his just subjectively, but there is something about the guy. Like, I mean, it's especially you kind of look at his demographic, and his demographic is like everybody. It's from older people, but especially he gets the younger people. Is what I notice online is all the people that post him just sitting up there on a stool in a huge stadium. Like, I don't know how many times I've seen a video of him doing that, like from younger people. So he's doing something right.
Yeah, it's so odd because, it's just one of those things where you're going, what, you ask yourself, what is it about him that does that? Not that you're trying to emulate or copy or anything, but sometimes you just want to know.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, maybe it's just he seems like a cool guy, and he was a football player, and, kind of seems like a cool guy you'd like in college or something, Sometimes it's that simple.
Could have been. It could be.
Yeah.
Scott said that he can't believe Ronnie didn't scoop up the Live, which is one of your songs.
Yeah, that's one of those that is still one of my favorite songs. And look, songs nowadays, like I said, they're a lot harder. Great songs are a lot harder to get cut, and they just take longer than they used to. Maybe no one will ever do that, but that song still has a chance. Maybe you get a few songs on the radio, and then people start looking a little more seriously at your back catalog. But that is one of those very few songs that I feel 15 years ago would have been cut for sure.
Do you ever feel like that the writers deserve a little more like radio recognition than what they get,
I've never had any thoughts about that, but I do have very strong feelings about being financially compensated. I feel like we are getting absolutely screwed as far as the payout. I mean, it's a problem, and it's getting better. They're slowly, incrementally getting better. But, that's ridiculous to have 100 million streams and, get paid $1,000 for that. That's absurd. And that was arbitrary. It was the people who started, the streaming services that just arbitrarily put that value on that. And that's someone's intellectual property. And, I think that we should be compensated. I'm not just saying that for me, although I am, but I'm also saying it for all the people out there that it would give them a living. It's what puts, food on the table of their families.
Right.
So yeah, that's that the credit, I don't care as much, but financially, yeah, that definitely needs to be worked on.
And I guess kind of clarify this for me, because I guess until tonight, I've been under the impression that the artists did not get as much off of a song, that the writers were receiving more compensation. But you've referenced a couple of times tonight about how that's kind of not true. Is that something that's a myth that people are putting out there, that, the artists don't get paid, and then, it's all the writers, but then when it comes down to the decimal points, who's getting it, kind of thing?
So the only place that songwriters really make money anymore is radio hits, having a song on the radio. And again, radio is slowly going away, but it is still there. And that's the only place really as songwriters. Yes, we do make more than the artist, but everywhere else, the artist by far makes more. All the streaming, which is most of where people listen to their music, it's the person that owns the master, owns the recording, not the song. So that's where they kind of got around that whenever they arbitrarily put the values on things.
Okay, well, that clears that up for me because I had no idea of that. I appreciate you doing that because, like I said, I did not have a clue. What is kind of your plan for the first quarter of next year? Are you looking at performing and being out on the road more? Are you still, going to be writing? Is it going to be kind of 50-50 or how's that looking for you right now?
Well, looking as far as specifically the first quarter of next year, it's going to be pretty much hardcore writing and recording, the songwriting gig. If it's usually I put an album out every couple of years. This year, it was about half of it was, doing the social networking, focusing on the artist thing, trying to sell tickets, releasing the single a month and doing all that stuff. This year is going to be a little bit more of a songwriter year where I'm pretty much focusing. Now, I say that I'll do a lot of shows, but just won't be releasing a whole lot of music this coming year. I'm in my third year with Sony Music Publishing. So I'm going to be really trying to just hit it hard, writing songs and then recording demos in the studio. And as much as I can, setting up the kind of hit songwriter rounds, coming to your neighborhood kind of shows, Bluebird settings. Yeah.
Okay. Those are always fun. I mean, they're great to go see. If you're watching and listening and you've never been to a writer's round, find one. And if you're going to Nashville, you can generally find one about any night of the week as far as a writer round goes.
Yeah, but you're familiar with that, but most people aren't, and it's different for most of them. Most people aren't super familiar with a really great professional acoustic show with guys who have hits or are gonna have hits that are sitting in a round going back and forth playing songs, especially in a theater scenario or a winery or all the places we do these things. I've found like people really, really love it because they don't get much of something like that. You do in Nashville, but like everywhere else, there's a ton of places that would love to have something like that. And every place that I do it wants us to come back, but it's just finding those places and people knowing about them,
Right. I just had a discussion today with a friend of mine, and we were talking about a writer's round that we just recently hosted with a nonprofit that I'm the director of. That was called Songs for Heroes, and possibly making that kind of a focus of what we do for next year, sort of where we had 7 writers. I think it was 7 or 8 writers from Nashville come up, and they got with veterans and wrote their stories in song. And some of them were just, major powerful. Now it's kind of a niche because, some people might want to hear them, some people may not because of the subject matter or something like that when it comes to dealing with war and veterans and PTS and that kind of thing. But it was really a cool thing to see when they did this. I mean, just great writers were up here, and it was cool. But if you can get to those in a and I don't know of any other really in St. Louis that had ever happened before. Have you had any up there? Have you done any there in the St. Louis area?
Songwriter rounds.
Yeah.
We've done 1 or 2, but they're typically something like for a fundraiser or
Right.
or a private event or something like that. So no, not St. Louis specifically, but we've been all over the country and done them. Like Indianapolis, we did one. We do quite a few in the South. I'm trying to think of all the places that we've done them, but speaking on the other thing you just mentioned, I work a lot with an organization here called Creative Vets, and
Mhm.
Creative Vets it's an unbelievable organization just like that. It was founded by Richard Casper, who was a veteran who healed himself through music. And in fact, they partnered with Big Machine. And if you were to ask, I don't want to say her name, but Alexa to play veteran songs by veterans, it would be Creative Vet songs. You can check them out on the streaming services. They partner with like Aaron Lewis, and they have big artists. But basically, what they do is, I'm doing it this coming Monday. In fact, they've worked with veterans from all 50 states, and they basically get these guys. They'll have 5 veterans that come to the Opry on Monday, and will write with 5 hit songwriters, and then they will take them and record them the next day in the studio. And then at the end, they'll give the veteran a guitar so he can continue to write songs to help him process things. And then they'll release those songs. So whenever you ask Alexa to play songs by veterans, it will be a song that went through that process.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with Creative Vets. I didn't know all the ins and outs of it, but I actually got familiar with them just by accident and started talking to Richard, and was supposed to get together with him in Nashville a couple of years ago. We couldn't get it to work out, but one of my prized T-shirts I have is a Creative Vets T-shirt.
Yeah.
So,
No,
and
and it's awesome to see it take off. I've been working on them about 6 years, and I do a lot of their Johnny and Friends stuff on retreats and working with families and stuff. But yeah, it was awesome because the CMA Awards honored him at the Country Music Awards last year and got him up there, which was incredible. And CNN made him his hero, one of the 10 heroes of the year on their big TV show. So it's just awesome to see him, because the work that they are doing. I mean, in fact, I'll be honest with you, this job is awesome. And I know my songs do affect people and have an impact, but the most impactful thing I do is working with Creative Vets. Like, it is very tangible that you can see the difference that it makes in those guys' lives, which is awesome because they deserve it, because they've done things and sacrificed so much for most of us that we can't even begin to imagine. And they're not taken care of like they should be. So it's a pretty cool thing.
absolutely, I'm with you 100% on that. Now, if they want to find out anything, I put anything about you, I put your website up there, so they can go to that, and then of course the streaming. They can check out all the DSPs and the socials and find out more about you. But and just I mean, I personally am looking forward to hearing more of what you got coming out. Some more of the songs, going back through the album, What Matters to Her. I haven't got completely through it all yet, but I can tell you this: anybody that's listening, if you and I don't say this just to say it because Tommy's on the show, but if you listen to that album, you're going to enjoy it, because it's really good. Everything I've heard up until now is very, very well written, and the production on it is great. The songs sound really good. And again, I haven't got through the whole thing yet, but I'm hoping that will probably be in the next day or two. I have a little bit of a commute to work, so I always like to spend it listening to music.
Man, I really appreciate that. I'm just curious, have you heard the first album?
I have not gone back and listened to the first one. I need to.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, I mean, I'll just be honest, my own opinion. I even think the first one might even be a better. If you like that one, I think you'll really like the first one.
Okay.
And I say that only because that first one was picking the best songs from like a 5, 6, 7 year period. to where the second one was more of like the best songs out over a couple year period. But yeah, no, I really appreciate that. So yeah, if you get a chance, listen to the first one, and I bet you'll like that one too if you like the second one.
Absolutely. I will do that. And I will say this before we wrap things up, and I do this for every artist that comes on, and I will do that with Lessons, the song that you did tonight. It will be put on the b4Nashville Spotify playlist. So
Awesome.
If you want to go there and check it out, and if there's any time that you want to hear it, you can absolutely go over there and look it up, or you can just go to Tommy's Spotify and listen to it as well. But if you're in a hurry, if you're like me, I have to search, and sometimes I can't search while I'm driving. So
Absolutely.
But Tommy, it's been fantastic talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on and just sharing. I mean, that's the main thing, your love for music and your songs, and looking forward to so much more. Hopefully at some point, we can, if you're going to be in the area or something, we can coordinate maybe getting out to hear you or something like that. Because I think, especially in that writer's round setting, I think those are so fun. I mean, like I said, people, if they haven't been to one, they miss a lot by not going to those.
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody who's in Nashville will be playing the Bluebird on December 12th. And just, I don't know why this date's popping in my head, but we have a show September 14th next year in Indianapolis. And we'll have a bunch more, but again, we'll have that all on the website. But yeah, it's mostly right around stuff that we do. And yeah, man, I really appreciate you having me on tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks again for coming on, and just for everybody listening and watching, just hit the subscribe button if you hadn't already to b4Nashville, and follow us. And also, if you're, checking Tommy out, follow him on his socials, and on the DSPs, and, follow him on there. I think there's a subscribe button. I don't do that very often, so I can't remember if it's just follow or subscribe.
There's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some kind of button on there that's along those lines. But hit that as well, and keep up with what's happening with Tommy and everything. And then go back and listen to his earlier stuff, because I'll definitely be doing that over the next few days for sure. And just want to thank you for everything that you do. I mean, the music that you put out, the music you're continuing to put out, the songs you write and have written, have just, touched a lot of people.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I'll do it as long as the good Lord wants me to do it. I'll be here doing it.
All right. Tommy Karlas, again, TommyKarlasMusic.com. Check him out. And Thursday night, trying to work on another guest. We'll see if she comes through or not. So until then, y'all have a fantastic night.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow b4Nashville on all social media and listen wherever you get your podcast. Tune in again for another country star of tomorrow on b4Nashville with George Davis. I'm Kevin Casey on behalf of Worldwide Fans. Have a great night.